Good morning, everyone. And for all of our DC government staff, I want to wish you a happy fiscal new year. It's the 2nd today, right? It's October the 2nd, and the fiscal year for us begins October 1. We are also coming off of a weekend of Art All Night, where there were very significant and well-attended and impactful, culturally impactful events across all 8 wards. As well as, I'm told, up to 600,000 people visited the district and are still here related to the events of the World Culture Festival, which was centered on the National Mall. So we know that all of these activities and the investments that we'll say a little bit about today are part of how the district's vibrancy is fully restored and our comeback continues. This was all strengthened by revenue estimates released last week, which show promise that we can continue to think big and creatively for the future of our city. So our approved fiscal 24 budget continues to invest in the most important parts of our comeback plan, and that is our people. And the people that we're specifically going to talk about today is our employment, our employees. And when I say employment, I want to say our current employees and our future employees. So we're here to talk about the fact that DC is hiring. DC is a great place to work. And Charles Hall, our acting director for human services, will say a little bit more about careers in DC. The first thing he's going to talk about are the hiring fairs that we've been conducting and what our 23-24 season of hiring fairs looks like and what our experience has been so far. Our past hiring events resulted in nearly 800 new DC government hires in the past 3 years. The fairs offer a chance for residents to participate in on-site interviews and in some cases on-site job offers. So we need residents more than ever to fill critical DC government jobs. And you can find careers that impact the community and help create and shape programs. Our jobs offer good pay and good benefits and the opportunity to have an immediate impact on your community. So we will kick off the season of hiring fairs on November 9th by prioritizing our veterans and spouses of veterans for jobs and honoring them for their dedicated service. Following, in February, we'll have a winter hiring fair, and the spring hiring fair will be on May, and we'll have another one in August. So these fairs require registration, and Director Hall will say a little bit more about that. But we encourage everyone to go to together.dc.gov and to apply for our jobs at any time. So with that, I'm going to ask Director Hall to say a little bit more about his process. But we want to emphasize, and I emphasize to my cabinet members all the time, that we have a dedicated group, over 33,000 employees across many multiple agencies that have worked and do work in all kinds of conditions to serve DC residents. We're local government. We need to be here. We need to serve in person. And we're very proud that even in the most difficult of COVID times, we never missed a paycheck. And so I want to ask Director Hall to come up now.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning to everyone. Just a little bit about the process And before we get into the process, I do think that it's important for us to highlight that just in this calendar year, we've hired 7,662 persons. So DC is hiring, and we want to stay on that trajectory. We want to make sure that people know there are great opportunities to think big, to do great things right here in DC government. As the mayor has said, we're going to have quarterly hiring events. The first one will be on November the 9th. And here's what we want you to know. We want you to know that prior to the actual opening of registration, you'll be able to see a full listing of the positions that are available for that event. Keep in mind that what we'd like for you to do is to pre-register. So once you see the information, you want to pre-register, pull up the information on the job openings, and start looking at the information that you're interested in as it relates to positions. We also want you to know that prior to the events, prior to each hiring event, we will have at various locations, most likely the libraries, an opportunity for you to build your interview skills and to get assistance with resume writing. We want to make sure that you can have engaging conversations when you interview with persons at these events. And so for our residents, we encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities. We'll make sure that we post them on our social media sites. They'll be posted on together.dc.gov, and we'll make sure that you have access to that information. We also want you to know that we're seeing tremendous results from these events. 3,000 people showed up at our summer event, and we're anticipating that we'll keep that trajectory. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that whether you have a high school diploma or you have multiple postgraduate degrees, you can show up and know that there's a place for you in DC government. So take advantage of it. Know that we are not only hiring, we are actively pursuing to ensure that DC residents have access to jobs and a career trajectory.
And so I want to thank the deputy mayors and the city administrator for being here as well, who have the tremendous responsibility of making sure that our agencies are on track to hire the people that we need. So with that, we'll take any questions. Yes, Mark.
Maybe for Director Hall, following up on a couple of the statistics that you cited for us, the 7,000 plus hires that you've made, is that this calendar year?
Yes, sir. That is this calendar year.
Do you have
for 2023. Keep in mind that that number does include temporary hires, and so for 2023, that would be the total number of new hires.
The flip side to that number of how many people departed DC government in that same time?
I do not have that number at this moment. We can follow up with you for sure.
And then, do you know the two agencies, the one agency that has the highest percentage of vacancies and the one agency that has the lowest percentage of vacancies?
I do not have that with me at the moment.
Do you know, is it even across the government, or is it some places? I mean, I'm thinking about police, obviously, right? Because it's always front of mind. But I'm just wondering if some agencies are doing a better job than others.
I'm going to take the danger of giving you what my suspects are as the highest and lowest, and they're certainly top three. This year, DCPS really did an outstanding job in getting folks hired, particularly their teacher openings. They have some number just in that profession that leave at the end of each school year, and it's a sprint to be able to fill those positions. They typically will start the year with a very, very low overall vacancy rate. DYRS on the other side has struggled. That's not new. That's really over the past, really since COVID, they've had a lot of strain put on those workforce. They've done a really good job hiring. In fact, I think they're the #1 agency at succeeding at hiring at these quarterly events is DYRS, but they have struggled under the strain to be able to keep their youth development officers.
Thank you.
Yes, Megan.
To follow up on that.
Sure.
So Councilmember Pinto has a bill that's kind of focused on some of the areas where the district has struggled, such as 911 call takers, social workers, and also police officers. I'm wondering, A, if you support that legislation, and B, if any of these hiring events or programs have any strategy about trying to fill some of these specific areas where the district.
First, I would say that the district hasn't struggled any more than anybody else. We're not talking about hard to fill positions in the district. We're talking about hard to fill positions in America. And so especially when you talk about police officers and social workers, and you mentioned another one, 911 call takers. And so for sure, we are supportive of any strategy that works. Now, we're not supportive of strategies that involve busy work. What we know is that we have to let people know that we're a great employer. We have to have a policy environment that it makes it attractive for them to come to work with us. And so we think that any legislation, especially when we're talking about police officers, has to address that policy environment.
And does the city have a strategy itself, regardless of legislation? What is the city's strategy?
We can't do anything regardless of legislation. We work in, a city of laws, and so we have to follow the law. And when the law is working against our recruitment efforts, we have to change it.
Are you referring to a specific law?
I'm referring to all laws that makes it difficult to police in the district.
Are you saying you don't support some of the laws on the books now? Could you elaborate?
Oh, I've said repeatedly I don't support some of the laws on the books. And we expect to, as we do with anything where we see gaps in the law and public safety, to have a package of reforms to address them.
But as far as executive branch hiring and some of the programs you have going on now, are there any strategies around trying to fill some of these specific jobs?
Sure. So we've advanced in policing, for example, a series of incentives that we think are showing promise that relate to housing and signing bonuses. There are some others that we proposed to the council that didn't go through, and we'll see if we're able to address them in the coming months. I'll ask Deputy Mayor Pia if she wants to say anything else. And we'll talk about call takers.
Sure, and so there are strategies across the public safety and justice cluster, and actually we're seeing promise. And at OUC, we did offer hiring bonuses. And in fact, with our most recent sets of hires, we actually will have a full slate of call takers, which is important. And so one of the things in the public safety and justice is the pipeline takes a bit of time. And so even some of the investments you're seeing us make in things like our cadet programs at Fire EMS, Metropolitan Police Department, at the Office of Unified Communications, our junior academy, and in this budget, FY24, investments that are being made in a paramedic school to grow local pipeline, which we know is important in public safety and justice for a number of reasons. One, we want people who live here to have pathways to the middle class and to be in public safety and justice and across the government. And also it allows us to really invest in them and for them to invest back in their city. And so that's one of the strategies that you've seen over time. The mayor has increased our MPD cadet program, right, 50, 100 to 150. And so we're really investing there because we think that's a long-term strategy. For cadet school, for the paramedic school, we're partnering with I'm looking at Michelle, who's sitting next to you, with our partners in the office, in OSSI, in DOES, in DC Health, to really get that going, because we've seen a lot of success. And so these are, of course, there's hiring bonuses and all that you're talking about, but long-term strategy means really growing those who are here and helping them to understand the different pathways. So that's some of what we're doing in public safety and justice.
And you mentioned a new slate of call takers. Did you have any data on, amount of call takers you've recently hired? Or?
I can get you. I don't want to get the number wrong, but I point here to Director Hall. With his help, we've been able to really move people through the suitability process to get all of our vacancies filled there. But we can get you the exact numbers. Yeah.
Paul, if you would talk about teacher recruitment and retention strategies.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Kine, the Deputy Mayor for Education. And we have focused a lot on our teacher workforce over the past couple of years, especially coming out of the pandemic. And I'm extremely proud of the work that we have done at DCPS this year. We started this year with 20% fewer teacher vacancies than we had in prior years, which the city administrator alluded to, which is really an extraordinary accomplishment when you look at what's happening across the country. We also, with teachers, as you know, and under the mayor's leadership, led with world-class compensation. So our DCPS teachers now make on average more than $100,000 per year. And the mayor also asked us to ensure that was true across the charter sector. So we have rolled out these very, very important increases in the wages of our teachers, which of course make it a very attractive profession. In addition to that, we're focused also on the kinds of pathways that Deputy Mayor Appiah was talking about, where we are now expanding the chances for our high school students to explore education as a profession. Our state agency this year is launching a teacher apprenticeship program where you can get folks that want to be teachers into residencies in schools to really do teaching and learn on the job while they're getting accelerated degree programs. So we're very, very focused on ensuring we continue to have the very best teaching workforce that we can. We're very proud of this work, and we are the best city in the country to be a teacher.
Thank you. I just would like to ask the city administrator to talk a little bit more about our strategies in the DPW area.
Each year, DPW has to hire this year over 200 workers to work leaf season. So if you notice, the leaves are starting to turn a bit early this year. So they are ready to launch leaf season in November. But they're on track and have hired the majority of those individuals that are on track to fill 220 positions for leaf season that will allow them to, and this year are completely separate from the folks that will handle snow. So if we have a slushy or winter, a wet or cold or slushy winter, you have leaf season overlap with snow season, and we'll have two separate teams at DPW doing this. DPW is also historically, and to this day, is an outstanding second chance employer. So they're also acting in ways that are educating and mentoring other agencies to be able to effectively hire for individuals and retain individuals who are coming back to DC having served some time in our justice system.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Mayor.
Good
Tom
morning.
Fitzgerald from Channel 5. Watching, you talked just now about police hiring, law enforcement hiring as a priority. Obviously, everybody in the city has been struggling for answers to deal with the crime situation right now. But we had spoken with Marcus Ellis yesterday, who is now the executive director of Peace for DC Group. One of the things he had brought up was referencing the Washington Post story the other day about how crime in some other major cities had gone down, but DC is still struggling. One of the things he had pointed out was that he believed that DC did not do enough on creating community coalitions to address crime. I was wondering, do you have any hiring incentives or priorities on that? Civic organizations, faith-based organizations, community organizations, a coordinator to get them involved in your efforts?
Well, Marcus knows well because he worked in our Office of Neighborhood Safety for 5 years, and part of their job is to create those coalitions. So I created an office, I guess it's 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where our investment in that office is pretty amazing. I think we started out with a $5 million investment in that office, and now it's over $50 million. So we're not lacking in people to do that work. Any other questions? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Caroline Patricus with Channel 7. What do you think the council's priority on crime should be with the legislation expiring in 2 weeks?
I've gotten a few different answers about this. I'm going to let Deputy Mayor Appiah address it. I'm told that there's temporary legislation in place that will keep the emergency that we put in place in the summer active until next summer. So I think that's one thing, and the Deputy Mayor will correct me if I'm wrong about that. But we think not only should the emergency be permanent, but all aspects of the Safer, Stronger bill that we introduced should be enacted permanently. And I think that not only is good policy, but it's necessary, I think, for the council to keep its momentum going towards legislation that's going to help keep DC safer. One thing that was not in the legislation was our focus on gun crime and gun penalties, which we think has to happen. Yes.
Just one quick follow-up. We had some drama up on the Hill this weekend.
Yeah.
Fortunately, did not result in a government shutdown. Now that the air is clear on that a little bit, have you heard from Congressman Chairman Comer at all about where the RFK bill is right now? Is that going to get to the floor?
We certainly hope so. I know that that is Chairman Comer's great expectation, that it will get to the House floor and onto the Senate. Yes,
I just had one other on-topic question.
sure.
Could you give an update on your sabbatical program, as well as how many currently, if there's been any new additions to that, as well as how many applications that are under?
Steve, do you have that off the top?
There's only one personal sabbatical right now here.
We can provide you with, I don't have the rundown in my head, but we have a handful that requested and were granted sabbatical. And when I say handful, does anybody know? We can tell you. I'm sorry, I just wasn't prepared to answer that question. Okay.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, Mayor Bowser. I have two questions, two different topics. One, Council Chairman Mendelson just held a briefing and indicated that Events DC has reached a deal with the Nationals over improvements there, including the new scoreboard. I had not seen that finalized. I knew it was being negotiated. Can you?
I cannot.
on that?
I cannot.
Okay. You're in support. Can you remind us where you are on that? The spending $20-some million on the new scoreboard. For this?
I can't comment on it right now.
All right. And then my other topic is related to Washington Post reporting on sexual harassment claims through the executive's office. There were my question related to that, and the chairman weighed in on this morning, and his belief is that your office and your executive order is not in compliance with what current DC law is that was passed in 2022, the enhancement to the Human Rights Act, which lowers the threshold for what would be considered sexual harassment. And the current standard by which your executive order goes, which is I think tied to the same federal standard, is severe and pervasive. And I know you've been considering and working on updating your executive order, but now we're learning that your executive order, again, according to the chairman, is actually not in compliance with DC law. So my question is, why, if the law has been in place since October of 2022, and particularly given what happened with Deputy Mayor Valchecchio, why you have not, as of yet, brought your executive order into compliance with DC law? And the follow-up to that is, what does that say about the cases that were unsubstantiated because they were held to a standard that is a higher standard than what the law actually is?
The mayor's order, when it was issued in 2017, reflected what everybody in the nation was doing. So I don't want to give you the impression that it was somehow higher or lower or better or worse than what happened anywhere in America. The council changed the law late last year, and we will, when we update the mayor's order, it will be updated to reflect that change.
But why has it taken a year? The law changed on
Honestly, Mark, I don't know why we didn't, or if it wasn't a focus of kind of getting that law changed over to the mayor's order. It should happen, and it will happen.
And it's just my last shot at this is just the 290 cases that were investigated under your mayor's order.
There weren't 290 cases since October.
Okay.
That was 290 cases since 2017.
I apologize. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So the ones that were then for this year, can you speak to those that may have been held to the wrong standard?
I don't know that they were, so I can't speak to that because I don't know that they were held to a different standard.
And then just a timeline, do you know when you'll be able to update?
I expect it soon. We want to get it right, and there are a lot of issues that are not easy issues. I mean, and I hope that everybody who read your article, right? Who read Megan's article sees how complicated it is, and recognizes that when you're dealing with human beings across as many agencies as we have, we want to put a law in place that everybody understands the expectations. More importantly, that everyone understands where they can go for help. If I'm troubled by anything, is that any one of my employees doesn't know where to go for help. The other thing that would trouble me is if they go for help and they don't get it. So we want to send the very clear message that we want to be a sexual harassment-free workplace. We have standards in place and policy in place. When I issued that mayor's order in 2017, it was among the most, if not the most progressive of any local jurisdiction in the U.S. We did it proactively, not because we thought we had a pervasive problem, and I still don't think we have a pervasive problem. I want to be clear. We're talking about 290 complaints right now, the number you just spit out, over 34,000 employees over 5 years. We don't want any, but we do, and I think one of the experts quoted, and I agree with this, says an absence of complaints would indicate a place where people were scared to come forward. Where people have complained and know that they're going to get a redress indicates that, you know, the policy is known and the policy is working. So we have to keep it up to date, and we will. And we will also, over all of the different agencies, some of which I control, others I don't, endeavor to get a system that shows what the government's liability is.
And just my last follow-up on that, the Post article also talked about the financial cost of that. Has there been a settlement reached with either of the two women who came forward about that?
No.
Thank you.
Can I have just one final?
Sure.
Do you think that the council is acting with enough urgency when it comes to crime?
I think that I've made very clear where I think the policies have been wrong, and over a number of years. And those issues relate to defunding the police, to making the policies of treating our police officers when employment matters different than any other employee. And in some cases they should be, other cases it makes it very difficult. And the law changes that make it hard to hold people who are dangerous. So I think that there are many things that the council is seemingly indicating that it's going to do that's going to change that. There are other policies related to fair decriminalization, you name it, that have happened, I would say, over the last 3 to 5 years that have made our policy environment not conducive to safe streets. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.